Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Albert Cho, where U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping finally meet. In late March, Trump announced in the Oval Office that he plans to speak with Xi, with reports suggesting they could meet in April or June. This will be their first face-to-face meeting in nearly 6 years. Could the summit bring a turning point in U.S. China relations? Joining us today are Wen-Ti Sung, Atlantic Council Global China Hub Non-Resident Fellow, and Yung-ming, Tunghai University Political Science Professor. A very warm welcome to both on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First, let's look at the U.S. President Trump's ongoing diplomatic efforts since taking office, from brokering a ceasefire in Gaza Strip to dealing with the Ukrainian war and transactional diplomacy with countries like Canada, Panama, and Norway. However, the most critical U.S.-China issue remains unresolved. So the first question goes to Professor Yung-ming. So what are your thoughts on the anticipated Trump-Xi summit? Do you think it would happen before June as many expected?
Well, ever since Trump got elected, there has been a lot of talk about a possible leader summit. I remember late last month, South China Morning Post, they ran a big piece of report about this coming leader summit, and they say that would be a huge diplomatic victory of China. So I think it's just a matter of time before the leader summit really happens. But the way both sides are looking at this summit is pretty much different. From Beijing's point of view, I think it might take a more cautious and wait-and-see attitude to this leader summit, while the U.S. side is a little bit eager to moving things forward. But that does not mean Washington has something from China. Actually, I think it has much to do with Trump's personal style, his transactional diplomacy, and his preference to person-to-person communication. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also, which leader is in what place to meet is also a critical point we should consider, because for Donald Trump, it was reported that he wanted President Xi to come to the United States. And for President Xi, of course, he wants President Trump to come to Beijing to visit. Wen-Ti, what's your observation of this?
Yeah, I think that the conversation about location obviously is a factor as well. The fact that there's such a notion as home court diplomacy. For example, when you play host, you get to be the ones who set much of the agenda items during that summitry. So I think in terms of whether we're going to be expecting a summit between the two of them by June or before June, I think we should probably hold our horses for a little bit longer for now. What it is that they are still very much in the posturing and bargaining stage about establishing who among the two great powers should be the one holding the upper hand, the one calling the shots, if you will. And in that sense, the decision to have summitry not only is an act that constructs their identity in terms of establishing who is the leading power, but also is also an act of conferring legitimacy on the other side. And if one thing we know about Beijing, it is that Beijing focuses a lot on identity, a lot on are we friends, are we foes, or what are we? And at the time when there's so many other friction going on, such as trade, tariff, and other issues going on, Beijing may not be in the best haste in terms of wanting to rush into a summitry at this juncture just yet.
And also, by the time we are talking now, by the day we are talking now, this episode is being recorded, is that we have witnessed the large-scale military drill, from PLA surrounding Taiwan. Even now, it's still going on. So, Wen-Ti, my follow-up for you is that, do you think that this military drill, like a constant and also very pressing on Taiwan, put a lot of pressure on the current, Taiwanese administration, it's going to be an issue for this coming meeting between Xi and Trump?
I mean, any kind of disruption to regional stability and peace, of course, is going to be an agenda item when it comes to the two great superpowers around the Indo-Pacific region trying to negotiate what is the rightful rules of the road for the region. And Taiwan, and especially China's military escalation in the region, no doubt will be part and parcel of that for sure. And I think at the moment it remains to be seen what is going to be the U.S. broader attitude about this. Of course, U.S. will be happy to say, of course, they want to encourage peaceful dialogue and resolution of the issue using nonviolent and peaceful means. But it remains to be seen just what gear is the U.S. under Trump administration, which is very transactionist, willing to go on this. Because even just a simple wording, U.S. can say they encourage both sides to show calm, to talk, or they can say we want to urge you or expect you. They convey different tones, and they'll be received differently in the Chinese side as well.
Yung-ming, do you think that this military drill by PLA is going to be a kind of a strategy for President Xi Jinping to show him to Donald Trump that if we are going to talk, Taiwan, the issue of Taiwan is going to be the top priority for us, and otherwise you will see this is the results. What's your comment on this?
Well, I think for China, the Taiwan issue is of course a key topic in any talks with the United States. So especially while the PLA is currently conducting a military exercise around the island, and last week I remember the Washington Post they have a news report regarding the interim national defense strategic guidance, which identified China as the pacing threat and highlight the importance of deterring PLA from taking Taiwan. So just like Wen-Ti said, the identity perception from China is very important. This kind of strategic guidance from the DoD of the United States can be viewed by China as a very hostile message. So probably most people in Taiwan are trying to guess in the motive of Chinese military drill these 2 days. And the one possible explanation is that Beijing is actually trying to show its displeasure against U.S. about this strategic guidance.
Identity politics is, in fact, very important to President Xi and also PLA, as much as trade as important to Donald Trump. Chinese scholars believe that Trump's 2 rounds of tariffs on Chinese goods under the shadow of the trade war since taking office have hindered the resumption of summit diplomacy between the 2 countries. So how do you two interpret this, Wen-Ti?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, tariff war as well as other kind of strategic level friction between U.S. and China, these are factors that go into constructing and remodeling what kind of relationship exists between U.S. and China. We remember going back 11, 12 years ago, China used to call for building towards a new type of great power relations between U.S. and China, for example. That again goes to show you that identity is key for China for sure, and certainly for China's perspective, they don't want to show too much eagerness at this juncture in terms of moving into a symmetry with Trump, because doing so will mean that China will accept Trump's tariff and other less than friendly policy towards China are legitimate, accepted to Beijing, and Beijing didn't want that.
Yung-ming, your response to this, the Chinese scholars believe that Trump's 2 rounds of the tariffs on Chinese goods.
I think tariff definitely is a key issue, but let's be real. It's not something new. Everybody knows Trump is going to raise tariff against everyone during he was running for president. So when we hear Chinese scholars talking about it, I think it sounds more like a negotiation technique. They try to set the stage in a way that gives them a better position at the table. Yeah.
The New York Times said that before the Trump-Xi summit, China must find answers to 2 pressing questions. Number 1, what does Mr. Trump want? And number 2, who can Beijing talk to in Washington who Mr. Trump might listen to? I think there are 2 intriguing questions. So what do you think is the biggest challenge China needs to solve between the summit takes place, Wen-Ti?
I think identify the right, useful, effective, and long-term sustaining channel of communication with the Trump White House. I think that is the question mark on the minds of Chinese decision makers at this juncture. And this is to go back to your question as well, like who exactly should China be talking to? Obviously, we know that Trump has a very personal style towards diplomacy. We can tell this from the fact that Trump's White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, for example, Marco Rubio, a number of other people that he hung out with when he was in Florida during the Biden years. It goes to how important that personal level linkage is. And it's unclear at this juncture for China which is the right channel, even if China wants to pursue that personal level diplomacy. It used to be Elon Musk, perhaps, is a name people talk about. But then more recently, we know that Elon Musk has announced that most likely he will have to step away from U.S. government role by the end of May, in which case Elon may be useful, but may not be that kind of longer-term broker that China needs.
Well, this is kind of, caused another interesting follow-up is that you think that Elon Musk is not Trump's friend anymore, or something going on out there that Trump said that, you have a big business to take care of, so your term is going to be over, and then go back to take care of your business. What's your observation of this?
Well, if only I could read the mind, right? But I think Elon and Trump definitely have much commercial business interests in common, and also seem to share a lot of the same ideological political preferences at this juncture in U.S. politics. But Elon obviously has to balance between his personal political preferences as well as business interests. And at this juncture, it seems like serving as Trump's wrecking ball, if you will, in U.S. politics seemed to be a nice short-term job for him. And then maybe by end of May, he's going to say mission accomplished, much like George W. Bush used to say back in 2004.
Especially the stock market's price of Teslas now recently doesn't look good. To Elon Musk.
I'm sure Elon will come out and say that he's taking one for the team, for the greater cause, that is.
Okay, all right. So what about you, Yung-ming? So who do you think Beijing can talk to in Washington?
Well, I think I'm not the inside observer about this. So I agree with this observation. Currently, I think that Trump has a very strong personal style about diplomacy. And so not just Beijing, I think almost every country in the world, they are trying to figure out who they can talk, who is the real person who can pull the string in the Trump administration. But I think one way to solve this problem is to focus on the topic you can discuss with the Trump administration. In this dimension, I think there are several issues which Beijing can communicate with Trump and actually earn some credits from Trump. Number one, I think, is the fentanyl supply chain. And the other one is the illegal Chinese immigrants deported from the USA. And the last one is Washington's hope that Beijing can play a more active role in the peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. So I think the first two issues, China can respond positively. But for the last one, I think it's a little bit challenging due to the close ties between Moscow and Beijing in the last few years.
Okay, Chinese officials met with Trump's close ally, U.S. Senator Steve Daines, with a meeting attended by Vice Foreign Minister Ma Zhaoxu, Vice Premier He Lifeng, and Premier Li Qiang, indicating China's high regard for Daines' visit. So Wen-Ti, the question for you is that does this suggest China has an urgent need to improve U.S.-China relations?
That I would say the direction is not wrong, but rather than saying China has an urgent need to improve U.S.-China relations, I would say China has an urgent need to figure out what Trump's White House is thinking. This goes back to the point I made earlier about how showing too much eagerness from China will actually weaken China's hand vis-a-vis negotiation with Trump. But certainly having intelligence, having information is important for China when it comes to recalibrating the best strategy. And at this point like this, China definitely wants to develop some kind of back-channel diplomacy, and we saw Japan and to some extent UK as well playing it to a T in previous weeks when we saw, for example, Japan knows that Japanese Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Abe, good personal relation with Trump, so they had Mrs. Abe, for example, to have a one-on-one with President Trump before Japanese Prime Minister visited Trump's White House, for example. The same deal, UK let King Charles meet with Trump before US-UK pursue further round of negotiation. So I think China is unclear. China has that figure, Jack Ma of Alibaba, or maybe some other figure. I think they will need to find someone like that to build out the right kind of warm and fuzzy atmosphere between the two sides.
I think there are two notions that worth our attention. Number one is that Trump is not a traditional type of politician, in that he focuses on person-to-person relationship, and number two that he is concerned with more about business than the traditional Washingtonian, that kind of circle. So I think that's the kind of domain that we can notice. What about you, Yung-ming? Given Diane's special relationship with Trump, do you view U.S. media analysis that this is paving a way for Trump-Xi meeting?
Of course, it's paving a way for the possible leader summit. And looking at the official, Senator Diane met the vice foreign minister and the vice prime minister. So those persons who are actually run the stuff. So we can say that both sides are indeed starting to prepare for the coming leader summit. But I would not say this means Beijing is in a rush. I agree with Wen-Ti. China usually take this kind of leader summit very seriously. They want to confirm everything, the large agenda and even the very trivial procedures. They want to confirm everything. So without credible consensus on key topics, they will not move to the next step. So realistically, the planning process could end up taking quite a long time. It might happen in June. It might happen even in August or September. Depends on the situation.
Okay, Chinese Foreign Minister spokesperson Mao Ning stated that the U.S. has recently been deliberately promoting the Taiwan against China policy and condoning support for Taiwan independence. While the Taiwan issue was not initially a pressing topic for the Trump-Xi summit, with the U.S.-China tensions rising and the situation in the Taiwan Strait growing tenser, will cross-strait relations become a top priority for U.S.-China discussion if the summit takes place? Wen-Ti?
Yeah, of course, cross-strait relations remains a key issue for China and therefore by extension for U.S.-China talks in general as well. I think for China likes to set the fundamental terms of negotiation straight before they pursue any kind of talks. You see this in China, constant talk about the ideal core interest, for example, of which Taiwan is a main part from Beijing's perspective. And really, if you look at Biden and Xi Jinping's previous summits, oftentimes China's side readout often like to talk about this idea of fundamental pillars or anchors or ballasts to the relationship, the kind of stuff that provides weight and therefore stabilize the ship for U.S.-China relations. Finding some kind of understanding of sort, however vague, strategically or constructively ambiguous, is necessary for China to pursue any kind of meaningful U.S.-China symbolic diplomacy, especially at the top level.
Well, at this for me, I think that Donald Trump himself does not really look up to Xi Jinping. I mean, in the sense that the Taiwan issue is important for Trump, whereas definitely it's important, it's a critical issue for the Chinese side. However, one speculation might be that if Trump and Xi they talk on the table, what might be Trump's reaction to Xi when the Taiwan issue was brought to the front burner? Yung-ming, you probably can answer this question.
It really depends because Trump is so unpredictable. Yeah, in the last few weeks, we saw a lot of message from the U.S. to Taiwan. They try to enhance its security commitment to Taiwan. So those are positive signs, but we cannot take it for granted, and it's very possible that just like many people suspect that there might be the first joint communicate between U.S. and China, try to settle the Taiwan issue between the United States and the PRC. Yeah.
Okay, from the perspective of the U.S.-China trade war, Trump also planned to impose millions of dollars in extra fees on Chinese-made vessels docking at the U.S. ports and ships registered in China to revive the U.S. shipbuilding industry. This move led to a large backlog of goods in ports or houses. Industry experts warn that with more than half of the world's cargo ships being made in China, this measure poses a greater threat than tariffs and will severely disrupt global trade, potentially triggering a trade Armageddon. So, Wen-Ti, so what is your observation of this newly developments? Is that going to be have a greater impact than the trade war between the United States and other countries?
It's going to have a great impact for sure, I think. And we know one thing we know about China, know about Trump is that he wants to bring back manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. So it's like if you get an iPhone or any smartphone, over time you will see something that says designed by Apple in Cupertino, California, but made in China, for example. For Trump, that's probably not good enough. He wanted to be entirely made in USA as well. So that's why you're talking about Trump asking to charge this new levy for any kind of Chinese-made ships, including those working on the U.S. companies, to pay extra for the access to the market in the U.S. side. That is going to create disruption for sure, in the short term for U.S. shipmakers, for U.S. Shipping companies in general.
Mm-hmm. Do you think President Trump care about trade at all, or he doesn't really care about trade? He does not look for a world where you have this exchange of goods and services, but rather everything is made in the United States. Everything could be sold in the United States. Because now more and more people speculate that maybe Trump's philosophy is really a isolated United States, not only politically, but also in terms of trade.
Right, so that approach is what we call autarky, right? When you want everything made and consumed in the same market. I think for Trump, I wouldn't say it's autarky in mindset. I'll say it's much more mercantilist in mindset, which is to say that Trump is still pro-trade, but he's strongly pro-trade on America's terms, defined principally by him.
Mm-hmm. Yung-ming, you want to add up on this? In terms of this new measure on this backlog of goods import warehouses.
Oh, yes, I think the profit issue is highly related to the U.S. maritime power, because for the United States, the maritime power has long been the cornerstone of its global hegemony. So, but we all know that 20 years ago, the U.S. Navy was the most powerful military force in the world. It has around 300 warships compared with 220 in PLA Navy. Nowadays, PLA has 400 warships, and most of them are new, and the United States has less than 300. So this kind of advantage between the U.S. and China has reversed. So President Trump, in his State of the Union, he mentioned that he would take measures to revitalize U.S. commercial and military shipbuilding industry. So it's not just about bringing manufacture back to the United States, but shipbuilding industry is critical to U.S. maritime power. So that's why the port fee is necessary. If you follow in this logic, port fee is necessary. It's a strategy for the United States to prevent its shipbuilding capacity and also the shipbuilding capacity of like South Korea and Japan to be pushing out by China. Mm-hmm. They want to keep the shipbuilding industry, and in that case, you can have the military power to fight in a possible conflict between U.S. and China.
So there is a military consideration behind this the move. Okay, let's move our attention to India. This year's Raisina dialogue in India, many middle powers discussed how to realign their strategies in the context of intensifying U.S.-China competition, using flexible diplomacy and economic cooperation, if you will, to expand their influence and secure national interests. Regarding the U.S. measure to impose additional fees on Chinese ships, Yung-ming, you are an expert in terms of Southeast Asia. Do you think that it will prompt major shipbuilding, as we mentioned, shipbuilding powers like European countries, Japan, South Korea, to reassess their dependence on China?
I think in the last few years, most the so-called global South countries, they have been considering an alternative way to navigating between the superpower confrontation. So in the last decade, the most important keyword in the IR literature is hedging. Those countries, they are claiming we are adopting the hedging strategy to expand our national interest. We can make good business with China, and also we can rely on U.S. security guarantee. But that was the case during the Biden administration or even before. But that's not the case nowadays, because it's very clear that for Trump administration, it is facing serious military challenge from PLA. So I think the mindset of Trump is that all countries in the world, they are taking advantage of us. They are taking advantage of our money, taking advantage of our jobs. So I want to reverse this trend, and I want to make all countries in the world to clearly identify yourself, which camp you would like to go with. So, of course, those global south countries, they can still argue that we don't want to take sides, we would like to take hedging policy, but I think it's not that easy.
Wen-Ti, your response to the same question?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like a two-part question because if you're a business and you're a government, you seem to have different calculus on this. If you are a business in other countries, for example, then when it comes to where to invest and what sector to invest, you think about where can I go that has the greatest predictability and that has the less geopolitical risk of doing business. And if you think about that, then the one issue that's been throwing in lately is that Trump's more transactionalist, much more creative diplomacy is creating new risk factors and uncertainties for many businesses. So if you're a shipbuilder in Japan, South Korea, Australia, where have you, then maybe you'll be observing Trump's maneuvers. A, you understand there's a logic to it, but B, also you don't know when this will stop and whether there'll be new rounds of additional issues, questions, and requirements coming up. So if you are a business, you will be wondering. And if you are a government from those countries, again, this goes back to the point I like to say a lot as well, which is Trump's transactions brand of diplomacy means that he treats friends and foes largely alike. And when you treat friends and foes alike, that means there is not much incentive to be your friend. And so if Trump's angle is to want to get foreign governments to shift their industrial policy in a way that Trump likes, it's unclear if his current approach will produce the best result at the timetable he wants.
Okay. Wen-Ti and Yung-ming, thank you for great insights in the episode. Like our show, subscribe to Time Talks. See you soon.